I love onions, from having them on hot dogs or a cheese and onion butty. But how much do we really know about the complexity that they bring to our dishes? Well, the answer for me at least is not enough.
We all love our onions, but I want to know my onions, so I've come to Parish Farms in Bedfordshire to get to grips with the best of the bunch. Paul Cripsey has been growing all types of onions for decades, and he certainly knows his stuff.
Hello, Paul.
Hello, Paul. Nice to meet you.
Checking your onions?
Yes, just checking these round shallots and seeing if they're ready for harvest, which they are.
So how many different varieties of onion and shallots do you actually grow here?
Well, on the farm here we grow brown onions, red onions, we grow the round shallots, the banana shallot.
How long have you been doing this?
Some 35 years, yes.
So I imagine things have changed over that time.
Before the 1970s, the onions were lifted and dried in the field. But the problem with English weather then is that September time it used to rain, and the skinners used to get spotty and black. So in the 1970s, a system was developed for doing the harvesting, taking them to store, which enabled us to actually produce an onion with a lovely skin finish, because you're buying with your eyes.
So you're now finally being able to compete with the Spanish on a level playing field then?
Yes, we have, and all the drying is done in a store where we create the Spanish weather conditions. Hot, not too
bit of sangria on the side, pool table, swimming, bit of salty water.
Well, not quite as easy as that. So if we get it right, we'll have the sangria.
There are 3 stages to the onion harvest. First of all, this machine tops the plants by slicing off the leaves. Next, the onions are unearthed and strewn out behind it, left to dry naturally in the sun for up to 24 hours. Finally, it's time to load the onions up before dropping them into a waiting container on this tractor, and that's where I come in.
I'm happy to help in any way. Well, you get to drive a tractor.
Well,
that'd be brilliant.
We are a bit short today.
What, drivers?
The drivers, yeah.
Oh, yes,
so it would be really good if you could just help your hand.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Have you driven a tractor before?
I have, when I was about 12 years old, straight into a tree.
Here we are, Paul. This is your tractor for the day. Now, it's a big machine, 24 tons. But I must warn you, Paul, if you spill any, you've got to pick them up by hand. Okay, are you happy?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'll give it a go. I've always wanted to drive a tractor, and now I'm driving a tractor. I love it. I'm going to give up my job. I don't want to be a baker anymore. You can leave me here.
In Britain, we're now producing around 70,000 tonnes of onions every year, and with constant improvements in the industry, happily for us, it means the British onion can be in our shops all year round.
This is the end of the shallot harvesting journey. They're coming now into the drying rooms here, and we're going to actually now create the Spanish weather conditions. We're going to blow air through them at 28 degrees centigrade to dry them all off and colour them up. And these will be ready for sale in about 4 weeks' time, and they will actually can stay in this drying room and storage room till about next June. So it can be a long-term store.
I do feel now I know a little bit more about onions / shallots. Having driven the tractor, and loaded it all up, brought it all here. It's sitting on its conveyor belt now, heading off to the storeroom where it's going to be sitting in Spanish heat for potentially even up to a year, which I find amazing.
I'm going to bake a shallot and onion tart, so I want to know which varieties have the most flavour. Dr. Mariel Jones has an experiment comparing the flavour of a red and white onion.
So the whole thing you do, you test onions in your laboratory?
What I'm going to do here is show a way in which you can assess how flavourful an onion is, without having to actually eat it.
I mean, I like actually raw onion in a butty, but when you cook it down, it totally changes. It becomes sweet.
The reason why they become sweet is because the sweetness is from sugars in the onion, and when you cook it, all the onion's characteristic pungent flavour is taken away in the cooking process. It floats off.
But Dr. Mariel is going to be testing which onion, a red or white one, has the most flavour when it's raw with a little experiment.
Basically, you add a reagent that reacts with the...
A reagent?
You add a chemical.
Okay.
Okay.
What chemical you added?
It forms a phenylhydrazone, which is
I'm sorry. Can we a phenylhydrazone. And that's not something you buy in the shop?
No.
But what's a phenylhydrazone?
It's a chemical grouping that absorbs light, so it's coloured.
And I thought onions were simple.
Sorry, you got what in there?
Pyruvic acid, and by an enzyme.
Okay, I think I'm going to let the good doctor get on with it. Mariel adds a reagent to the onions in the test tubes and places them in the water bath. Is everybody keeping up? Time to find out the results. Which of our onions has the most flavour?
You can see that there's definitely flavour in them.
Yes.
There's more in the white one than the red onion.
So the white one is the darker one.
Yeah.
And the red one, ironically, is
the lighter one, yeah.
Okay.
So, the onion with the strongest flavour from our batch is the white onion, and the stronger the onion, the more flavour it's going to add to my tart.
Mariel, I love that out there, but tables are 10 now. Now you're in my realm. What I've actually chosen is a white onion. I've chosen a banana shallot, and I've got some chives in there.
So it's the flavoursome white onions that make it into my first dish, along with banana shallots and chopped chives. And by using 3 different types of onions, I'm hoping for a range of savoury flavours in my creamy shallot, onion and chive tart.
Now, I've actually given you some chives there. Can you do me, I tell you what, do me a little favour. Cut them up, just little pieces. So you probably have to trim it off and then just cut them probably about halfway down, all right? Now, to start with, to make your onion tart, you need flour, to which you're going to add some lard and some butter. Do you like using lard? If you ever use lard when you're cooking?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you use it all the time?
Oh, only in some things.
What do you use it in?
Welsh cakes.
Welsh cakes?
Yeah, and pastry.
Why do you add lard then? I know why I add lard. Why do you add lard?
It alters the texture. It makes it a much better texture than just using margarine or butter on its own.
Okay, I've got my lard in there. I'm going to add my butter. You're doing a good job with those chives there. And then what I'm doing here, I'm basically just rubbing the lard and the butter into the flour. Crush it down, and the lard does add to it. It adds texture, but it also adds that emulsifier to the dough, I find, as well, which seals stuff in.
Now I've used lard and butter, but for the veggie option, you can just use butter. Mix until you get a good crumb structure. Add seasoning and a little cold water until the pastry dough comes together.
Pop that onto the bench, get a little bit of flour, just dust it lightly, and then you just give it a little bit of a knead. That is enough, just a couple of turns it together into a lovely bit of pastry. You wrap that up and then pop it into the fridge. Just leave it in there for about 10-15 minutes. It just solidifies it and makes it easier when you roll it out. So that'll go in the fridge. And once it's been in the fridge, I'll show you this one here. Show you the difference. You can see it's a little bit more elastic, it's a little bit more forgiving when you roll it out.
Start by rolling the pastry so it's large enough to cover the tin base and the sides. The pastry should be rolled out to a minimum of 5 millimeters.
One of my little jobs when in my dad's bakery when I was about 12 years old was actually making apple pies. And one of the things you do when you're making apple pies is you roll this pastry really thin. I used to do about 20 lids and about 20 bases. But half the time I never used flour. So the whole thing just broke down in my hands. My dad walked in and says, "I'm going to knock it out of your wages." I said, "But Dad, you don't give me any money." So it took me about a year to pay him back. I reckon that's about there. I like to roll it around a rolling pin. Bring over your tart dish and then basically just roll it out across the top, like so. And then all you do is basically fit it into your tart case. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of this pastry off the side and push to get right into the corners. Just use your pastry and go all the way around. Go across the top with your hands, release the extra bit of pastry, and then neaten it all off, all the way around, and there you have a beautifully lined tart base.
Line the tin with baking parchment and fill with baking beans, firmly pushing the beans to the edge to prevent the paper from lifting up.
Now that needs to go into the oven for about 20 minutes at 180 fan and blind bake it. Once you've baked it, this is how it turns out. It's beautiful, it's dry, and it's nice and neat. Now the next stage is to prepare the filling. What I'm going to do is pop my onions straight into the tart case. Now these onions, you just need to spread them out. So the idea is to keep them as cool as possible and keep all the moisture in that onion. Is there an actual way of cutting an onion without crying too much?
Yes, I mean, don't cut it at the root base, at the bottom end of the onion. Use a sharp knife.
Why?
It means you're cutting less cells, releasing less flavour. And you want the flavour in your dish. You don't want it floating off into your eyes.
That will prevent as much going in your eye.
Yeah.
You'll still cry, I always do. I'm pathetic.
Next, prepare the custard.
Okay, 3 eggs. That's my 4th egg. Now what I'm going to do is add a yolk to enrich this custard.
What do you do with all these whites that are left over?
Meringue.
Of course.
Beautiful meringue, pavlova.
Then add double cream, chopped chives and whole grain mustard.
I think this blends so well with the onion. I think it's a marriage made in heaven.
Gently whisk together. Then pour over your onions. Allow to soak in before finally filling it to the top of the baked pastry case.
And that will make a beautiful onion tart.
Looks lovely.
Pop your tart straight on your tray and then bake this off for 30 minutes. This one here has been baked beautifully for 30 minutes. Just run your palette knife underneath and then just release it onto the tray. I promise you that is going to be delicious.
So there it is. My tart is perfect as a scrumptious supper for all the family. Serve warm rather than piping hot. For me, it's a real and deserved celebration of our great British onions.
You can't eat it now.
No.
We'll have it a bit later.
Okay,
All right?
good.